Hi, I'm going to show you just how easy it is to automate sending DMs on Instagram, all without code and in 3 easy steps using Axiom.ai and no-code browser automation tool. I'm Alex Barlow, co-founder of Axiom. Let's dive in. Quickly, before I show you how to install and configure this template, let me just talk you through how it works. So the first thing this template does is read data from a Google Sheet. It fetches the URL to an Instagram profile. It opens up that page. Then just like you would send a message, it will check for the message button. If it's not there, it won't click or send a message. If it is there, it will click the message button. The bot will then type the message into the input and send it. Once the bot's done that, it will delete the processed row from the Google Sheet and proceed to the next. You, of course, are going to need a Google Sheet. I've already set mine up. You only need a single tab, and what you need is some rows with links to Instagram profiles. I've also added a column with names in so I can personalize my message. For the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to send one of my own profiles some messages. Installing the template. It's pretty easy to install. If you've come from YouTube or discovered this video on YouTube, go to Axiom.ai. Go to the top menu and click on templates. You'll discover this template and many others that you may want to try. If you're already on the template page, just click the install button over there and the template will install. If you haven't created your Axiom account, don't worry. Click the button that says create an account and then install the template. Okay, let's get going and configure the template. Okay, the fun part. So in just 4 easy steps, we will configure this Axiom. It's going to take a matter of minutes, if that. So to give the template some context as I set it up, I'm going to go to Instagram. I'm on one of my profile pages. You might recognize the picture of me. This is the template. I've got it on screen. Let's start the configuration process. And I'll explain the other steps that we don't have to configure as we go along. So step 1 is the first step we need to configure. I'm going to expand that, read data from a Google Sheet step. This step essentially fetches your data from a Google Sheet, as the name alludes to. So a spreadsheet is the first field we need to fill in, and we need to search for the sheet we've created. I've called mine DM. Now I've got only a single sheet in there, so I'm not going to have to search for the sheet name, but if you're using a different tab, you can select it there. You'll see the output has now shown a preview of the links and the name that I showed you earlier in the Google Sheet. So that's that first step set up. No code. Not very frightening at all. I'm going to collapse that step. I'm going to go on to the next one, and we're almost kind of done. So keep following. Onto the go to page. So this is the first sub-step in our loop. So this loop basically is what goes through each row in the Google Sheet, sending a DM to each row in the sheet. Now, I will mention the limits on Instagram DMs a bit later in the tip section, but for now, let's focus on the steps. So we've got step 2. We don't need to do anything to configure that. The loop is going to set itself up as we configure it. So don't worry about the loop through data setting at all. The first step we need to set up inside the loop, which is a sub-step, is 2.1, and it's a go-to page. This step essentially loads a page, and we put a URL to load. And so our URLs to the profiles are actually in the sheet. So we need to pass the Google Sheet data into the enter URL step. How do we do that? Well, we click insert data, Google Sheet, and then we select the column of the URLs, which is column A. And that's the URL passed in. So now the bot can load the profile page we want to send a DM to. That's pretty cool. So that's our loop set up, and you can see the loop through data is now, as I mentioned, would set itself up, and it's going to loop through the URLs, and that's what we want it to loop through, so that's just perfect. So I'm going to collapse step 2.1, that's done now. Step 2.2 should be set up already, and step 2.2 essentially is a scraping step that scrapes for the word message, because we want to check that we can send a message to the profile, because you're not in Instagram allowed to send messages to every profile. Sometimes the button is missing. So we're going to do a scrape. We're going to check. We're only going to try and send the DM if the word message is found. So onto step 2.3, and this is where we use an if condition. So we're going to basically take that scrape data, and we do the data to check against is the scrape data, and it's going to be that message word we scrape for, and we're going to check against the word message. So if you're running this bot in another country, you may need to change the term to check against. That's worth noting. And so the if condition basically only if message is found will these sub-steps inside the if condition run, and they're the steps that send the message. So click if message is found, step 2.31, we'll click on the button, and that loads the messaging UI in. We then have a wait to allow Instagram to load. We have added a click element. You may have seen it earlier, but sometimes when you run Instagram DMs, a not now box appears up. And step 2.33 is there to click on it. We also will make that an optional click. So if that click is not found, it doesn't matter. It can just be ignored. We then have a wait for that pop-up to go away. And then we enter our text. So we don't need to select the input because that's already set up, but we need to enter the text we want to send. Now, you can type a message straight into the text box, or you can insert data from Google Sheet. I want to insert a name from column A so I can personalize it. I'm going to have a little comma and type something silly like "you are great." And that's my message set up that I want to send. Obviously, you may want to send something more relevant to your business or your brand. So let's collapse step 2.35. That is now set up. Step 2.36 is already 2.3.6 is already set up, and it's basically recorded key press. And that is basically to submit the message. We just press return. We don't click on anything. We press return. And that's the DM sent. And you can see all those steps that automate sending the DM are all in step 2.3. Now we have one more step left to configure, step 2.4. We want to find the sheet that we set up with the profile URLs in. Make sure it's the same sheet name, list. And then we're going to leave first row to delete and last row to delete set on 1. What does this step do? This step basically deletes the row we've just processed, so we don't send another DM. Okay, that's it. The bot is configured. That didn't take long at all, and you learned a little bit about how the bot was made and how the steps function in each part of the automation. Okay, now on to running the bot. Quickly, before I click run, if you do want to schedule this bot and run it in the cloud, you will need to add steps to log into Instagram, although we are shortly adding a step to share your sessions, or a setting that allows you to share your sessions into the Axiom cloud, and that'll save you having to add the login steps. Okay, let's continue. Let's click run and see what happens. This part I just never get tired of. I love watching Axiom. A lot of my work's in the browser. That's why I'm into browser automation. That's why we made Axiom. Here's Axiom opening up. I'm going to try and explain what it does as we go. It might go a bit too fast, but it's going to be pretty cool. So we're opening up my profile. The orange means we're scraping the header to look for the word message. If the word message is found, it's going to click on it just as it has. We're also going to turn that annoying notifications off, and the message will be sent. It's just a little bit below out of the fold. Let me move there we go. Now we're going to loop through and do the next row, which is going to, of course, send me another message because I'm doing this for a test. But you can see that's how easy it is to automate DMs. This is so freaking cool. Again, we're checking for the word message. And if you're enjoying the countryside, that is the Scottish Highlands up on the west coast, which is just stunning. It's an amazing part of the world, but please don't go because I want it to remain quiet and beautiful. Okay. Again, it's going to loop through and send another message. I think you've probably seen enough. Now you can go and automate your own DMs for yourself. Worth noting, you can customize any template in Axiom simply by opening up the step finder and adding steps. So for example, you could add a go to page in, simply search for go to page, and you could load up a link to a post, or you could add a click element and go to a post and add another click element to like it. Just one of the ways you could possibly customize this template if you wanted to. Next up, tips. Just in case you get stuck at all with this template, let me run through a few basics. So step 2.1, let's start with this one. Don't forget to insert the data from the Google Sheet, otherwise the bot's not going to get very far. Let's now look at step 2.2. Now, if you start getting an error with step 2.2 and around step 2.3, you may want to reselect the message. Let me just go back to the profile page. There we go. You may basically want to reselect that message. Now, what I did was not actually select the message button per se. I select the whole column, and I find that is more reliable. Press complete, so just reselect that. Now, setting up the if condition, do make sure the data to check, step 2.3, do make sure the data to check is the scrape data. Do check the condition to check against is message, any word. But bear in mind that will be different if you're doing this in Spain or if you're doing this in South America. The language will be different. It could be Spanish, it might be Portuguese, for example. Okay, let's just collapse step 2.3 now. Let's look at the sub-steps in the if condition. Click element message. All I did was select the word message. Let me just check. Yeah, if that stops working at all, just reselect the button message. Again, you'll see an error message. If it tells you there's an issue with element 2.31 not being found, you can just reselect it. The not now pop-up window, I think I select that on a custom option, and again, you may need to change this if you're in a different language running this bot. You may need to obviously change that into Spanish or Portuguese if it's spelled differently, or whatever language is native to the country you're running your Instagram in, because obviously you can send DMs from pretty much any country in the world in any language. So I'm going to collapse that now. So you would need to change that step, enter in the text message. Again, if the message is not finding the element, step 2.35, just reselect the input. And that should fix it. Make sure you've added your message to be sent. Sending a message, I would just re-record the key press, but return should work every time. Okay, do let us know if you get stuck. We do offer great customer support, so if we can be of any help, just let us know.